Good day, everybody, and welcome to Marketech Mondays, a show that features industry leaders who will share about their career journey to inspire the world of marketing. This is an initiative of Blogapalooza and Marketech APAC. Our guest for today has been part of organizations like Procter and Gamble, Radisson, the Oberoi New Delhi, and Max Healthcare. She now heads brand, marketing, and CSR for the Fortis Healthcare group. She has worked in the services sector throughout, from hospitality to healthcare, and she also has a short stint in the media. If you ask her, cost-based marketing or purpose-led communication is after her heart. It would be very, very interesting to get to know her. Let us all welcome our guest for today, Miss Jasrita Dhir. Hi, Jess.
How are
Hello,
you?
Jess. Very good. Thankfully, quarantine life has been good to me. I've been very productive. How about you? How is the lockdown treating you?
Very well. So I think, I share the sentiment that the lockdown and this period has been very, very productive for a whole lot of us. And I see that, you look on the internet and people have a hidden chef inside of them, a baker inside of them, what have you, so many things. So yes, I think it is productive for a whole lot of people. More so for us in the healthcare industry, because as you're aware, Ace, healthcare is part of the essential workers industry and at the forefront of fighting the pandemic. So while I'm not a frontline healthcare worker, but being part of healthcare industry, you try your level best to support the frontline healthcare workers with whatever you can. So yes, there's been a lot of activity.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been a busy couple of months for you, in Fortis Healthcare. But I want to know, Jasrita, in Marketech Mondays, we really feature experts in marketing. When we talk about healthcare, has your job always been in healthcare, or how was your first job like? Was it also marketing?
The first job was actually not marketing. It was more aligned to the sales function. It was in direct marketing. So, I had a campus placement with Procter and Gamble. And Procter and Gamble, for their feminine hygiene product, Whisper, they run a schools program, a schools outreach program. So I was in charge of the Greater Punjab area, taking care of Chandigarh and all of, the cities of Punjab as a direct marketing executive. That was my first job.
Yeah. This was what year?
This is year 2000.
Oh, year 2000. Well, you're quite young if that's the case. Jasrita, I also want to know, when you talk about the Greater Punjab area, when we talk about the Greater Punjab area, is that a very busy metro, or is it more of like the countryside? I've never been to India. I would love to experience India after all these COVID thing is done.
Right. You must do that. You must definitely do that. But what I have to say here is that, Greater Punjab is one of the many states that make up India. India has states and it has union territories, as you're aware. Okay. So, Chandigarh is the only city which will come close to being a cosmopolitan city. But the Greater Punjab area actually is a lot of tier 2, tier 3 towns. So this is tier 2, tier 3 towns, plus a city which is close to a cosmopolitan. And this is not a very industry-driven market. It's primarily been an agrarian sort of an economy. That gives you a little bit of an idea. Punjab is called the food bowl of the country. So that gives you a bit of an idea,
Yeah. Oh, that's something that I should definitely visit when I go there. Yeah. Well, you were talking about your first job as someone who worked in sales, no? But when it comes to marketing, when did that shift happen? What got you into marketing?
The shift happened in year 2005. Like I said,
Yeah,
I started out in 2000. So
yeah,
the shift happened 5 years later.
yeah.
I would say the shift happened for two reasons. One is I think I've done what I wanted to do in sales. And this is something that I recommend to all sales and marketing professionals. There should not be this thick Chinese wall, which
Mm,
is dividing the sales and the marketing functions. We have
mhm.
to be more cohesive and more
Yeah,
aligned. So
agree.
usually what happens is that a whole lot of salespeople look at marketing people and like, what do they do with these fancy jobs?
Yeah.
We are on the street, we get the business, okay? And then there are a whole lot of marketers who say, oh, we are the custodians of the brand and we come
Mm-hmm.
up with these fancy campaigns. And why do
Mm-hmm.
salespeople get all the glory?
Mm-hmm.
So healthy competition is all very good,
Mm-hmm.
but if marketeers were to have at least once a sales experience in their life, and if salespeople were to once dabble into marketing, there would be a more healthy appreciation for what one another brings to the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having done this target based sales achievement, etc., I thought I was looking for a kick which was higher than just achieving my sales targets for the month, right? And that
Yeah.
is a high. That is a high. There's a kick, but sometimes when you get used to, you want a higher kick in life. So
Yeah.
I was wanting something more than just achieving my sales targets for the month.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something which was more creative, and therefore, this
Mm.
bent towards marketing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you still remember maybe the first major marketing campaign that you worked on, or like maybe not the
Yes.
first, maybe the most remarkable ones that you worked on? Maybe
I
alone,
remember
maybe
the
with a
first.
team. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Tell us
remember
about
the
it.
first. I remember the
Yeah.
most remarkable, but there's no way that I'll forget the first because it was what should I say? The rites of passage
Mm-hmm.
was
You're
quite
right.
something. Okay, so when you get into healthcare, you got to understand healthcare is a technical field, and there is no way of trying to, if you're not a doctor yourself, you have to get your hands dirty. Okay, you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand your product. Who's your product? Your product is a doctor. Your product
Yeah.
is a highly skilled individual, okay, with whose time is at a premium. So you got to understand your product, you got to
Mm-hmm.
understand your services, and all of that is technical, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as marketeers or as people who are not, trained in medicine, you got to roll up your sleeves. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to learn it, while being with the doctors in their OPDs, be in the operating theaters, see how an operation is done, and then talk about it and then
Yep.
market it. So you have to be
Mm-hmm.
willing to do all of that.
Yeah.
So my first year in marketing, coming from industries like hospitality and media, very, very
Mm-hmm.
glamorous industries, into healthcare, which is, just as what should I say, as hardworking, as
Yep.
toiling as it gets. I had to work on the entire stack of the marketing communication stack of the flagship facility of Max Healthcare that they were
Mm-hmm.
launching. So the
Mm-hmm.
biggest facility, which is in Saket in Delhi, today also that is the flagship facility that was being launched. There were four very senior doctors which were
Mm-hmm.
hired. Their institute collaterals had to be made. Each one of their institutes had to be launched, and then the overall hospital had to be launched.
That's a
So
big one, huh?
yes,
That's
that's a
a
big
really big
one.
one,
So,
huh?
so
Uh-huh.
from the pre-launch to the launch to the post-launch sustenance phase and all of that, that was my big first campaign, and
Uh,
a trial by fire. So I don't think I'm
uh,
ever going to forget it. But now that I look back, I won't change it. I won't change it in a heartbeat. I would have it because that is what prepared me for my such a long career, still continuing in healthcare. The
yeah.
fundamentals were sown there.
Yeah. And when you said that you learn while doing it, I totally agree. I mean, a lot of what I know right now, I did not know in school. I got to learn almost everything on the job while doing it,
Correct.
figuring it
Correct.
out while I
Correct.
was, how do I do this? Oh, maybe I could ask people. Oh, maybe I should do it myself, make mistakes along the way and figure out, okay, this would be the best way to do it. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I understand that experience is a good teacher, but were there any particular people, mentors that helped you along the way while you sort of transitioned into this field?
Yes, yes, and many along the way. I think that way I've been blessed is that through these 2 decades and continuing that I've had through various stages of my journey, my career, I've been blessed and fortunate enough to have mentors who've mentored me, and different styles of mentorship when we talk about
Yeah.
it, right? The first one that I like to talk about is Mr. Sanjay Rai. Mr. Rai is somebody who was with me at the Oberoi, New Delhi, and then he joined Max Healthcare. And he knew that I was wanting to make this transition from sales into marketing. And therefore, I was also getting married around the same time. So he told me, listen, this is a job. I'm going to make you an offer that you can't refuse, in trademark Godfather style, right? But only kinda. And voila, the transition happened. And the first year, it was so difficult. But I think it was the guidance and the mentorship which sort of, saw me in good state. And also, he had this uncanny ability, Ace, I would say, is to spot potential in people and then nudge them, so much push them till they achieve that potential. And he could see that potential in me, which I didn't see in myself. I was a Marcom advertising person. That's how I started. And he told me that, I think you need to start understanding corporate communications and public relations as well.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said, I'm not a corporate communications person. And he said, stop it, stop that nonsense. Okay. And you are, and you will know that. And he just pushed, he wouldn't have it any other way. He almost shoved it down my throat. Okay.
How
I'm
did
so
you
grateful.
feel? How did you feel back then? I mean, of course, it was uncomfortable at that time.
Yes.
But like
It was
in hindsight, it makes sense in hindsight. But at that
complete
time,
total sense. At that time I think you just have to take that leap of faith, and that is what a mentor, I mean, this awe and respect that a mentor has in you. There is this currency that they have with you,
yeah,
with their mentees, and therefore while you are not convinced and it's very hard, and sometimes you're like, oh my god, why do I have to do it, but you're willing to take the leap of faith for your mentor. And soon enough, you realize that it was all for your own good, right? So here's the first
right.
one that I want to talk about.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
second one, and I think she's going to be my life mentor, whether she likes it or not, is Dr. Dilpreet Brar. I met her at Max Healthcare. And then, she moved to Fortis Healthcare. And then soon after, I also moved to Fortis Healthcare. So in all together, I think we would have worked close to 11 to 12 years together. I never reported into her directly, but I think the fiery brand of leadership that she brought, a very fiery brand of leadership, but balanced with empathy. It might seem like what I'm saying is an oxymoron. How does a fiery stand of leadership go
Yeah.
with empathy? But no, she is this person who has empathy for the team and for the patient and for the consumer. But what she brings to the table is a no nonsense, no holds barred. What you see is what you get brand of leadership.
Yeah.
And there are just so few women leaders to see. The problem is also that when we enter the corporate boardrooms, etc., there are hardly any women there to look up
You're
to.
right.
And then
I have to
and
agree. Yeah.
you have, and then you see a woman like this, who has this way of, as you're moving along in the career, you take your entire team along with you. And as a woman leader, you when you reach up there, it's very difficult to reach up there. You're also lending a hand to the ones who are coming up there,
Right.
and helping them. So that's something that I love about her. Will continue to, and she's, like I said, she's continuing to be a mentor in more
Yeah.
ways than one. As I moved from Max to Fortis, and from Fortis, I joined as an associate general, as a deputy general manager, and then moved on 3 years later to the leadership role. As I was making this transition to the leadership position, the then CEO of the company, Mr. Bhavdeep Singh, I have to thank him for his leadership as well, because I think, in him, what one had is, he was the most hardworking person on the team. Whichever team that he was in, he was my most hardworking CEO ever, right? So, this whole thing, which we often say to our teams, I'm sure you have used it or must have been used on you, to say, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I won't do. I'm only asking you to do what I am doing, right?
Yep.
It's just
Yep.
so true, because he would first lead by example, do by example, and then expect it of you. And a great proponent of women leadership. Again, very few men that you see,
Yeah.
around who are big proponents of, women leadership, not just by mere lip service, but by doing it, by
Yeah.
example. So
Yep.
because of these things, sorry about this long answer,
No
but you
worries at
asked
all.
me about
Yeah.
my mentors,
I
and they
enjoy
have,
listening to these.
yeah, and they've
Yeah.
impacted my life in such a positive way, that
Yeah.
I'm ever thankful to all three of them that they
Right.
were there.
Yeah. I also look up to, women leaders who are strong, because, I have a lot of mentors that I really look up to. And when you were mentioning something like, oh, a mentor should be like, you step on me. If we could all get higher, but I want to get you higher faster. So step on my shoulders. And
Yeah,
and when you said that your mentor was really leading the way, doing it,
yeah,
showing you how
yeah,
to do it, and
yes,
expecting
yes,
that from you, I can't
yes,
so relate, because that's also how I do it with my team. I mean, a lot
right,
of my teammates will attest. They would be like, okay, she's done it. So that's probably how I should do it also. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and speaking of doing, speaking of being on the job, maybe I know you're very busy. Maybe you could walk us through how a typical day is like on the job. Maybe pre-COVID and post-COVID. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I'll try and let's try and take a crack at it. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Pre-COVID, your average day would be, your day would start early. You just go through the news and you'll see what's there in the news, about your brand, about any surgery that has happened, any procedure, anything, because when you're in healthcare, you're really at the cutting edge of healthcare technology,
Mhm.
etc.
Mhm.
What your competitor is doing, etc. So your day starts with sort of scanning the news. Also, there could be some messages from doctors, because they start their day really early. So the time to catch them is before they
Yeah.
start their day, which is around 8:30 a.m. Or after they've seen their patients, which is post 4 p.m., 5 p.m. That is the best time to catch doctors. So if you've sent a campaign and you've been waiting for an answer, or you sent some creatives and you needed an approval or something like that, that is your time. So the morning hour, even before you reach work, your sort of prep sort of and the follow-up starts.
Mhm.
Then when you reach work, I think the day starts with typically what is called a morning meeting, a morning
Mhm.
briefing meeting where you get your team in. Pre-COVID, you'd get them in physically with their cups of coffee, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. Post-COVID, obviously, it happens on Microsoft Teams
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
whatever have you, whatever format
Yeah.
you have. So you get and you start. What's the most important jobs for the day? You do your day planning. You do your week planning.
Mhm.
If it's a Monday, then you obviously are checking your periodic progress for the biggest projects, etc., milestones,
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
And then your day would also go, into some agency management, because
Mhm.
marketing is a whole lot about agency
Right.
management. So there is always some campaign to chase, something which is falling behind, some brief which was not understood, some landing page that needs to be optimized, some ads which are not yielding the results somewhere,
Yeah.
and all of that. Also, marketeer's job, a very non-glamorous but a very essential part of a marketeer's job, is
Mhm.
aligning the internal stakeholders.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think a marketeer's arch nemesis is the CFO of the company. Okay, because they look at marketeers as big spenders.
Expense. Yes.
Yes, yeah, big
Uh-huh.
spenders, and marketeers look at CFOs as Mr. Miserly. Okay, Mr.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to loosen my purse
Yeah.
strings, etc. Big misers. So
Yeah.
this tension and this tussle is always on. So I think a lot of a marketer's day also goes into aligning the internal stakeholders, whether it is finance
Mhm.
or to getting the payments out, or it is supply chain for vendor onboarding and management. Okay, and this is
Right.
something that I want to say too, because I see a whole lot of young marketers coming in, and they get
Mm.
very hassled with it, and I have to tell them that it's not just the external stakeholder that's important. The
Yeah.
internal stakeholder is just as important, right?
Totally
If
agree. Mhm.
great campaigns will come, that will come, but alignment and having this having the consensus of your internal stakeholders in the boardroom is extremely important. Sales, and then of course there would be some campaign for which alignment with salespeople has to happen. So you'll be talking to your sales force, doing those alignment calls, coordination calls, stand-up calls, etc., etc. You have to dip into at least twice in a day into your social listening channels to see what is being spoken about your brand. Is there any customer feedback that requires answering to? Is there a complaint? Is there something, a crisis, something going viral, etc., etc.? Voila, it is time before for the evening debrief to so there's an evening debriefing meeting, and thereafter again it is time to catch up with your doctors on any approvals, whatever that you have. And so that's how your day comes to an end.
Post-COVID,
Post-COVID, I think a whole lot of these physical activities shifted to online activities. And also, what happened is that because people were searching for the disease, people were searching for whether it's plasma therapy or the vaccine, etc., etc., the online searches for every healthcare brand sort of quadrupled. I can tell you for a fact that the online mentions for Fortis Healthcare in the month of Feb were around 12,000. And in the month of March and April and May, jumped to about 36,000. So you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be almost, we have to structure it in such a way that we were forever available to our, to the consumer who was trying to reach out to us online. So that took up a lot of time. Also, what took up a lot of time post-COVID was trying to understand this disease and put out communication, right? Because you're a healthcare provider, you're a leading healthcare provider of the country, and everyone is looking up to you. And in India, healthcare is a state subject. It is not a central subject, so it is guided by each state's policy. So which means Delhi's policy could be different from Haryana, Gurgaon, could be different from, wherever, Bombay's policy, okay? So therefore, you had to follow what each state medical council was saying, health council was saying, plus what the center was saying, okay? And then put out communication on your digital channels for people to follow, what to do, what not to do, what is safe to do, how can they ensure their safety and the safety of the doctor when they come in. Within 48 hours, we had to go live with our virtual consults platform. So, the IT team and
I can imagine the stress.
Yes. We were burning the proverbial midnight oil and trying to get this platform up to, mitigate the risk of infection to both our patients as well as to our doctors. So post-COVID, I think life became a lot more chaotic, a lot more tentative. Very here and now.
Yes, I like that.
Very connected. Okay, so although you're virtually distant, but very connected. But I would also say that now that 3 months are over, I can also say with looking at this short term that when you're able to get a bed for a patient, or when you're able, there is also immensely gratifying when you're able to, save lives or impact lives by being in marketing, not being a nurse or a doctor, is also immensely gratifying. So that's how a day has been post-COVID.
I totally agree with the here and now, because, there was a time when people would ask you, what is your plan for the company 5 years from now? Where do you see yourself in 3 years? I'm like, girl, I can't even plan for the next 2 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yes,
it's been so it's like the here and now. We have to be very, very agile, and that I would say turbulent way of dealing with life right now really, maybe makes us all, how do I say this? Makes us all a bit, it makes life more difficult. But I also want to know, Jazz, when we talk about challenges, how do you handle challenges? I mean, in marketing, we encounter so many challenging things every day. How do you respond to these challenges? How do you handle them? How do you manage people in handling challenges, maybe crisis in terms of PR, or maybe, just challenges in general? How does that work for you?
Right, right. So in your question, there is a generic question and there's a specific question,
Yeah,
and I'll
yeah,
try to have a generic answer and then the
yeah,
specific one for PR and for crisis.
yeah.
The way to deal with challenges is to be open and receptive to change. And I know humans are creature of habit, so we don't like change. I know that. Okay, we are no different, but you have to be open and receptive to change. Okay, you have to be willing to upgrade your skill all the time. So if you're in this student and then in this learning mode, it has worked for me, so maybe it doesn't work for others, but I'm talking about what has worked for me. I'm always in this open learning student mode. And when you're
Yeah.
in this learning mode, when a challenge gets thrown at you, you immediately get into, oh, so what could be a
What do we?
possible solution? Okay,
Yes,
so what do we
yes.
do? Let's find
We're
out.
the
Let's
same.
ask.
Yeah.
But when you think you know it all and you're an expert, and then a challenge gets thrown at you, like, whoa, you're first in denial that how could I have a challenging situation? So I'm not in denial, first of all, so I think that sort of this helps. That's number one. Number two, I think in marketing, because it is so interlinked with technology, and now marketing is largely digital, which is changing by the minute, it's extremely important that you keep brushing up your skills, that you are ahead of the curve, that you try and bring your A game to work every day. You do that, and you'll be able to anticipate some of the challenges at least. So not crises. A crisis can happen anywhere, but a challenge is something that you can see at least coming from a mile away, because then you tend to do some bit of forecasting. You need to have some bit of vision, foresight, etc. So I think that's the second thing. The third is, I asked this of people who managed me, my supervisors and my managers, and they said that whenever there is a crisis or a challenge, okay, you're there in the middle of it, okay, with your hair all pulled out, but your hands all dirty, your head down, hands dirty, with the team trying to figure out a solution. And I think these are the best things that we have, which is use them. Okay, they're therapeutic. The negative energy that builds up inside of us, when we put them to use, it comes out. And oftentimes we're able to come up with a solution. Just get your hands dirty and try and figure out a solution. It's a hit and trial. It's a plan A, plan B. Plan A won't work. Plan B, plan C. Something will work. Just try it out, right?
Yeah.
So I have a bias for trial and for action over, let's say, thinking. So I don't procrastinate too much. Yes, you need to strategize a bit. You can't just jump into action. Of course, you need to have a plan and a strategy. But once you've done it, right, just try it out, and you'll often find a solution. So that's my answer to your generic question. My answer to your specific question of how do we deal with PR crises or online crises that happens is, I think the first thing to have is empathy. And that is something that if you look at even our responses, you will see at the end of the day, we are in the business of life and limb. And if a consumer is upset, they're upset because, they think that for a loved one, we didn't do the right process, right?
Yeah.
It's not a hand phone. It's not a commodity that you can change. You can't say, I'll replace it. You can't, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that we do is that we adopt not just adopt, we have empathy and we adopt an empathetic tone. Always try and put ourselves in the shoes of the patient or the attendant, whoever is irate at that point in time, to say, it can happen to a loved one, and even we won't be very rational at this point in time, when you do it. So I think that's point number one. The second is our online is listening helps us, So the thing about a crisis is also when you get to know, So if you are every day, every morning, every evening checking in, if you've created those WhatsApp groups with the agency and with yourself and with your customer experience people, then you know it the moment the crisis is hit, and it just gives you a longer period to be able to some lead time to be able to respond to it. Okay.
Yeah.
The third is that the PR teams, PR agency, and the digital team, the online reputation management agency, and everyone, we again very cohesive, and we are. It's not in two silos that action is being taken, so that's point number 3. And also what we try and do is try and deflect the crisis as much from offline to an online to an offline world, which is you acknowledge to a person on Twitter, if they've written on Twitter saying, we heard you, and the hospital representative will get in touch with you. But the call that goes to that person once you've got the number will go offline. If you have to have a meeting to explain, that will be offline in the physical world, so that the rest of the whole World Wide Web is not watching this and having their own say in the game. No, you don't want to do that. And you only come back once the crisis has abated and once you've hopefully reached a successful resolution to say that, we heard you. We hope that, your concerns have been met with, and, wishing you good health always, So these are some of the steps that I follow every time that there is any crisis.
Yeah, that's great learning. I mean, the behavior, at least here in the Philippines, of people in the internet, it's so similar. Like, when they see something probably in Twitter that, someone is ranting about this company, everyone will have a say, it happened to me also. My friend said it was like that. So there's like a pandemonium online. But I like what you said about you take it offline. You solve it offline, and the online takes care of itself when you solve it offline. It's pretty much the same, the behavior is also like that here in the Philippines. Now, when we talk about all these experiences, I mean, you've been in your career for quite some time now. I'm sure you've probably encountered a couple of, I would say, failure points. Maybe not really failures like big, large, enormous, unforgettable failures. Maybe not that, but failure points. And then after that, maybe we could also talk about the successes also. But if you were to think about your greatest career failure, what was it like? What was it in the first place? What was it? And how did it impact your life?
So must have been many failures. A 2-decade-long career cannot be only about successes.
You're right.
It can't be nobody else's. It definitely has been dotted with a lot of failures. And failures are what you learn from, is what makes you mature, it's what makes you humble, it's what makes you aware of your human failings. Because when you start out as a 20-something-old, you're like, I'm going to change the world. Like, the world has never seen anybody like me.
Like that too.
Right. And then along the way, you get to know your circle of influence and your circle of control. And then you start to say, hey, I'm going to break my head over all the things which are in my circle of influence or my circle of control. And not beyond that. I cannot solve world problems. Okay, not one person at a time, not one day at a time. So I'm sure there must have been a lot of failures, and they have been. But I cannot recount one. I cannot say like I can talk about my first campaign, or I can talk about my mentors. I'm not able to pinpoint and say, hey, this was a big enough failure. It fails me. Sorry, my failures right now fail me. But yes, I can tell you that there have been enough that the career journey has been punctuated and dotted along the way. And failures are big learning grounds, right? You pick yourself up, you dust yourself up. Okay, you learn from it, and you move on. And hopefully, you do not commit the same mistake again. I mean, have another failure and maybe a new one, but not the same failure over and over again, because that's insanity. That's not failure, then that's insanity. So I'm sorry, I don't have one to say. There have been many, but
but maybe we could talk about like the greatest career success, and maybe we could also talk about what's so special about that success.
Yes, and that's easy, because we started in 2016 something called an organ donation awareness and sensitization campaign. This campaign that we started in 2015-16, it ran its course for 3 years, so it's ended in 2018, 17-18. And what we've taken on was not a target. Usually as a private company, you'll take on a target which is for your company. No. The target that we've taken on was for the country. So as you know, that the World Health Organization, it ranks all the countries on the basis of certain health indicators like maternal mortality rate or infant mortality rate or open defecation rate. I'm sure you're aware. One of those health indicators is the organ donation rate of that country.
Mm-hmm.
And India fared very poorly, on this particular metric. The top of the table when we started out were Brazil and Spain. So in countries like Brazil and Spain, you have 40 per million donors. This is the rate is how many you have per million donors. And in India, in a country of 1 billion, we did not even have 1 per million donors when we started out. So we started out with this campaign called More to Give. It was more of an organizational initiative, and in which you had to get, in which public policy was involved, in which you had to get your competitors, your other hospitals to come along, in which you had to do significant soft peddling with the government, because the public-private partnership had to happen, and of course we had to enroll in big youth icons like movie stars or sports persons, etc., to endorse the cause and to say that I'm pledging my organs, will you? Because this is a bit of a behavioral change. This is very deep-seated. Anything which is cultural, anything which is deep-seated in your mindset, that change is the hardest to, and the longest, takes the longest to come by. You, as a private healthcare company, you take a target which impacts the social health indicator and your country's tally, when countries are put together, and you're able to move the needle. The human impact was there for everyone to say. So during the course of the campaign, there were people who were waiting for organs, and 2 or 3 months after the campaign, they were able to get that life-saving organ and save their lives, right? So the kind of life-altering impact that it had on people, the fact that we're able to move the needle for your own country, we started at India at being 0.5 per million organ donor rate, and in 3 years we were able to take it to 1 per million organ donor rate. I think this is just so immensely gratifying that's the reason that it is special.
That's so impactful. I mean, imagine saving lives because of that initiative. Amazing. Yes. And when I introduced you earlier, it was cost-based, passion-led causes for you. Is this something that you really, is it like your personal mantra to be always cost-led, cost-based, passion-led, heart-based? Is it like your life mantra or like a career mantra maybe?
Yes, I would say so, because see, as marketeers, who are you? As marketeers, we need to have a pulse on our consumer, on the economy, on the market. You are the eyes and ears of the market to the organization. You're the consumer's voice inside the boardroom, because everyone else in the boardroom, the human resources head is the voice of the people. The finance person is a voice of the bank, the chief operating officer for everyone. But if the consumer is the one who's paying for you, the only one who's paying for your services is the consumer. The consumer's voice in the boardroom is the brand marketeer, okay? And therefore, my mantra is to be that consumer's voice in the boardroom, no matter how unpopular it is, no matter how harsh it is, because not every time will you have brand love. There would be times when the consumer is disillusioned with your brand, dissatisfied with your brand, or whatever it is, right? The speaking truth to power is something that comes very naturally to me. This is something that I have chosen, that I will be that consumer's voice in the boardroom, no matter how unpopular it is. And you're right, this cause-based marketing and this cause-based communication is after my heart, because, if you have a skill, then with that skill, either you can amass a whole lot of financial wealth, which is good for you if you do, or you can impact human lives. And when you're able to impact human lives, even though indirectly, I think that is immensely gratifying. There's no feeling which is more gratifying than that. And that's why it's close to my heart.
Yeah, and I totally agree. A mentor of mine said, leave the world a better place than when you were there in it. I mean, of course, he didn't say it like that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The world has to be a better place because you were in it. So leave it a better place. Yeah?
Correct. Correct.
That's good. That's good. It's been an insightful discussion so far. But we always have in the show, we always talk about influencer marketing and being in marketing for a couple of decades now, maybe. Uh,
Yeah.
Maybe you've worked with influencers too. Maybe you could
Yes.
tell us
Yes.
more about your experience working with influencers, and maybe it's a different, I'd say, a different market, a different way of doing things in India versus how we've been doing it here in the Philippines or in the rest of Southeast Asia also. Tell us about your experience working with influencers.
Yes. No, so we have experience working with influencers, and I'll tell you how it has worked for us. See, you go to an influencer for one of the two reasons, right? Either you go to an influencer for reach, because your TikTok videos reach out to a whole lot of people, or you are this Instagram
Yeah.
princess or whatever have you. So either you go to people for reach, those
Yeah.
influencers, or you go to influencers for impact. By impact, it is maybe you don't have a crazy million followers, but whatever close niche group of followers that you have, to them you're the authority, you're the word, and they follow what you say. Okay, so usually brands go to influencers either for reach, if you're a mass brand, obviously
Yeah.
that's more important.
Yeah.
Or you go to them for impact. So
Yeah.
intuitively, as healthcare as a category, you might have figured that impact is far more important than reach. Okay, because when there's a toss up between the two, you don't want to be with somebody for the wrong reach. So here could be somebody who's very popular, but who's putting up videos of, let's say, narcotics or gun-toting videos, etc., etc. And that kid could be very popular on TikTok or whatever, or Instagram. But do you, as a healthcare brand, want to be seen as that your brand being endorsed by an influencer who's smoking or irresponsible behavior? You're a healthcare brand. You're not a youth
Uh-huh.
brand. You're not, whatever have you, right? So I'm just
Uh-huh.
painting a picture for you that, therefore, for us, we choose our influencers very, very carefully. For us, in a toss up between reach and impact, we always go for impact. Okay. And the third thing that we try to do, and we've successfully done, I'll take an example and tell you, is go for more than just an episodic engagement with your influencers. It can't just be, here's my product, I want to
Agree.
launch it, I want to go to influencers, and then it's over. No, you choose them, and you look at and then cultivate a slighter long-term relationship with them. So we did a campaign on Twitter that you can look up for our mental health, saying #unmute yourself. And unmute yourself, as it says, is that people who are dealing with stress or with depression, the first thing that they feel is that they can't express themselves, that they can't open up. They're all bottled up inside, but they can't give a vent to their feelings. So to them, we wanted to reach out and say #unmute yourself, right? So for that, we went to all the celebrities, small to big time celebrities, local celebrities, let's say in a city where we were present, to national celebrities who at some point in time in their life have battled with stress, anxiety, depression, or had somebody in their family who had that. So when these influencers talk, they're not just plugging a product or a service. It's not a mere plug that's happening, a direct plug. They're talking about a life experience of having gone through it themselves or seen it from close quarters, up close
Yeah.
and personal for a family member, right? Now, after that, if you go to them 1 year later, let's say, when we went to them and said, a lot of, exam time, there's a lot of anxiety, and we know that everywhere, and it's a worldwide trend. I don't know if it's any different, that you see a lot of suicides among students which go up, during exam time and during results time. You go to the same people and say that after depression, we want to create some awareness around children and suicides. Okay, and you go to them. Again, they are more likely because they are introduced to your brand, there is some affinity, there is some background to go to, and now you know that these are the set of people who are positively predisposed towards
Yeah.
these kind of services, right? And then you can go to them for something else. So this is something which in our mental health space has worked beautifully for us. And if you look up this campaign on Twitter, you'll see how national tennis sports stars, cricketers, TV stars, film stars have sort of endorsed this campaign, and all pro
Right.
bono, because it is all
Wow.
all pro bono, because it is all for a good cause that you're trying to do. It's not that Fortis is going to sell more of its medicines or more of its procedures. No, it's not that, right? You're doing something which, in your words, like you said, makes the society a more livable place, a
Yeah.
happier place for students, for people in general. So that's our experience with influencers. Choose it right for your category. In a toss up between reach and impact, go for impact, and slightly more long-term engagement than episodic.
Yeah,
Three
yeah.
mantras.
Yeah, very similar also to how it's like in most of Southeast Asia that I know. It's all really impact. I mean, reach is also important. We're not discounting the power of reach. It's still
Yeah,
also very important. But when we're
right.
after the sustainability, the strategicness of the effort, we're really after impact. And
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
so many value bombs, Jazz. Thank you so much for that. And
Thank you.
a
Thank you.
lot of people watching us are, maybe starting out in their marketing careers. Maybe they're young, maybe it's their first job, or maybe it's their few years of working, and they would probably consider a career shift in marketing. What would be your advice to all of these new souls trying out their career in their field of marketing?
Go make your own journey. Don't follow any advice.
Best advice ever. Yeah.
That's the advice that they're most likely to heed to. I'll give them the advice, but I know that they're not going to heed to it because they're young. So I thought I'll say upfront what they're more likely to heed to. But I just have two simple things to say to them. Okay. The first is please never forget why you decide to be a marketer. There would be times in your journey where you're feeling low, where you're feeling pressured, where there's the targets, numbers, family, whatever issues. But please remind yourself, constantly keep reminding yourself, why did you decide to be a marketer? You decided to be a marketer because you wanted to be the consumer's voice inside your organization. Always be your consumer's voice, not your boss's voice, not your CEO's voice, not the popular voice, but the consumer's voice, because he or she is paying for your salary. Okay. That's why you exist in the organization. So I would say be in sync with your consumer and reserve a table for him or her in the boardroom. Okay. Where you sit in the boardroom, it is not you sitting in the boardroom, it is your consumer, your customer who's sitting in there. I think this is the most important piece of advice that I can give. And, you spoke about failures. I could say one of the failures is oftentimes in my life, I forgot about this advice, but then I reminded myself. And I came back on track, right? Sorry to go back to your
No
earlier
worries at
question.
all. Yeah.
The second I would say is that keep innovating. It's nobody else's responsibility to, upgrade your skills. You're in a field which is changing because your consumer is going to keep changing. Because there are new avenues, there are new mediums, there will be new platforms that they are going to be on. And you have to have their pulse, okay? So it's your responsibility to keep innovating. If you will keep innovating, you will keep your creative juices flowing, and you will be a marketer who's in demand always.
Yeah. That's nice. I learned so much in this session. But before we end, I want us to be more personal for a bit.
Okay,
Huh?
all
Yeah.
right.
If you would describe yourself in 3 words,
Oh my
what
God.
would these 3 words be and why?
Passionate. Can't do anything without passion. If my heart is not in it, I will not do it. So therefore, passionate. Integrity based. Values are important to me. I can't say why, but they are important to
Yep,
me.
yep,
So
yep.
therefore, integrity based. And third, sorry, I'm going to give you a phrase. You asked for a word, but I'm going to give you a phrase.
No worries at all. Yeah, that's totally fine.
That
Yeah.
that phrase is usually used for printers, but it can be used for me as well. What you see is what you get.
Mm.
So, in the corporate world where a lot of people wear masks or learn well to balance and mask their emotions, no, for me the face is the index of the mind. I'm pleased, you can see it on my face. I'm not pleased, you can see it on my face, right? So yeah, passionate, integrity based, and what you see is what you get.
Yeah, I sort of felt that too in this discussion. I felt like we were really just beside each other, really having a girl talk, having a career advice, mentorship of some sort. And I'd like to thank you, Jazz, for really making time for us
Thank you.
today. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for really, making your for being generous with your talent, with the skills that you've learned, your lessons along the way. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you. I honor you also. Thank you so much for being part of Marketech Mondays, Jazz. And we hope to see more of you.
Thank you, Ace. I'm also looking forward. I've enjoyed this conversation so much that I hope that there are more additions to it. And this is not just this is just the beginning of many more to come.
Yes,
You've
this
been a
is just the
fabulous,
beginning.
fabulous host and a moderator. Thank you, Ace.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jazz. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you in the next Marketech episode. Bye bye.